In the video on basic pentatonics, we saw how a single 5-note scale could be used to create a melody over a chord sequence. In fact, we used the same scale regardless of the chords changing beneath the improvisation, which demonstrates the robust and versatile nature of the pentatonic scale. But, for a more refined approach, let's change the pentatonic scale when the chord below it changes. Let's start with 2 chords in the key of G major. We'll use chord 1, that's a G chord, and chord 4, which is a chord of C. And we'll use the notes of G pentatonic to play over a chord of G and a C pentatonic scale over a chord of C. Here's the sort of thing. Before we go on, let's just compare those 2 scales. Here they are, and you'll notice that they're very similar. In fact, they are different in just 1 note, meaning they have 4 notes in common. There's a B in the G pentatonic scale, but not in the C pentatonic scale, where there's a C instead. So it's quite simple to tweak the G pentatonic to make a C pentatonic. Let's look at the other major chord in the key of G. That's chord 5, a D chord. Again, we'll choose the appropriate pentatonic scale, that's D pentatonic this time. And if we now compare D pentatonic to G pentatonic, you'll notice that, as before, the 2 scales are almost the same. There is just 1 note's difference. In the G scale, there's a G, but not in the D scale, where there's an F sharp. So, both C pentatonic and D pentatonic are different from G pentatonic by a single note. This makes it pretty easy to find the appropriate scale. Once you've worked out the pentatonic scale for chord 1, you need to make a small alteration for each of the other 2 scales. Move the 3rd of G pentatonic up a semitone, and you have C pentatonic. And if you move the tonic of G pentatonic down a semitone, you'll have D pentatonic. Here's a piece of music that uses just these 3 chords with the appropriate shift of scale as the chords change. Before we move on, take a moment to reflect on these 3 scales and you'll see that they're all entirely made from notes of a G major scale. Of course, all major scales are built the same way, so we can say that every major scale contains the pentatonics on 1, 4 and 5. The other 3 diatonic chords we're going to use are the minor ones. In this key, that would be chord 2, A minor, chord 3, B minor, and chord 6, E minor. Now, if you remember from the video on basic pentatonics, the major pentatonic scales have the same notes as their relative minors, that is to say G major and E minor, C major and A minor, and D major and B minor all have the same notes as each other, which means that all 6 of these pentatonic scales, 3 major and 3 minor, are all contained within the scale of G major. If you did the exercise at the end of the video on basic chords, rolling a dice to see what chord would come next, try going back over that and creating an improvised melody by playing the relevant pentatonic scales over whatever chord sequence you came up with. Maybe spend 2 or 4 bars on each chord, just to give you time to make the adjustment. Here's a sequence you can practice with.